Welcome back to Haunted and Historic Australia for another episode in our Adventures series. We continue this week with the Richmond area, looking at Richmond pioneers and historic buildings. When you take a walk around the Sydney suburb of Richmond, one of the 5 of Lachlan Macquarie's towns, you notice how well preserved the town is, with its historic buildings. Maybe not historic in the sense you would have in Europe, but for Australia and its European settlement. Even only 200 years on, there is not a lot in Sydney that is left of the old colonial days. Richmond and Windsor still give you a peek at the old colony. And when you do a bit of research, one family name sticks out for Richmond, and that is Bowman. George Bowman had his hands in everything to do with the town, even in its politics, as well as his sons. We thought we would talk a little about how he was one of the main men in Richmond's beginnings and what remains of his legacy today. Bowman House or Cottage had its foundations started in 1817 by James Blackman, a police constable. But after he fell on hard times, he sold the property to George Bowman. George finished the house in 1820, making it his own. George was born in 1795 to parents John Bowman, born 1764 in Fife, Scotland, and Honor Honey, born 1759 in Cornwall, England. John moved to London with his younger brother William to work for their uncle as cabinet maker apprentices. Honor must have also moved there, and they married in 1788 in London. George was only 3 years old when he arrived in Australia in 1799 with siblings John James Robson Bowman, aged 10, and Mary Bowman, aged 2 months. The family were one of the earliest pioneers to the Richmond area. John secured a free passage to New South Wales on the recommendation of Joseph Banks. This may be also why the family supported Bligh upon his arrival as Governor of New South Wales. The family arrived in 1798 aboard the Barwell ship. He was granted 100 acres at the Hawkesbury and was so happy in the area he advised his brother William to migrate to the colony too. Daughter Mary, now 2, was baptised in 1800 along with their 1-year-old son William. Brother William arrived in 1801 aboard the Nile, along with Richard Rouse and family and Margaret Catchpole, which is interesting that they all ended up in the Richmond area. At this time, they must have been building the area and encouraging people to go there. William became a publican, and after a rocky start, losing his wife Susanna, he married a Mary Giles. He died in 1811, his son and daughter getting the inheritance, and it seemed Brother John blocked the new wife from inheriting anything. What a scandal. John farmed his land successfully over the years, and Governor Gidley King granted him another 40 acres. He also purchased 160 acres from other settlers. His luck after Bligh was replaced by Macquarie around 1810 seemed to dim for years. Having trouble with a defamation case saw him lose some of his land and livestock auctioned off to cover fines and bills, but managed to keep his head above water until his death in 1825. Honor died a year later. Now his sons did well though, acquiring land of their own. Eldest son, John James Robson, had joined the British Navy at age 12, but left at age 25 to seek his fortune. He travelled to India and China, and settled in India, Calcutta, dying from cholera. He had married 3 times, and inheritance went to his children, all in India, except his youngest, Jane, who moved to New South Wales. Younger brother William, upon father's death, inherited money and land around Bathurst area. He also was a bit of a traveller and visited his father's old Scottish home and family, as well as mother's in Cornwall. As well as his older brother John James's wife's family in England, he marries her sister Elizabeth and brings her back home to Australia in 1838. He also brought 40 workers from Scotland to work on his and his older brother George's farms. He and brother George were invited to join and became involved in Richmond's council. William also getting involved in exporting of salt beef from India and Germany. Brother William died in 1874 and only had one son with wife Elizabeth that died in infancy, but had a daughter out of wedlock with Anne Keenan, who married another fellow, Thomas Cadell, while William was gallivanting overseas. Now, George Bowman married Eliza Sophia Pierce on the 24th of May 1820 at St John's Church of England in Parramatta. His obituary said about him, "The second son survived all the rest. When he grew up, he devoted his attention to pastoral pursuits, as well as combined cool daring with caution and perseverance. He found this field of enterprise the opportunity for acquiring wealth. When the Hunter River was discovered, he went over the mountains from the Hawkesbury to settle in the new country, and took his abode as a squatter, where now his sons possess very valuable freehold estates. He prospered in business and, by his sterling character, won the esteem of his fellow colonists and the confidence of those who were entrusted with the maintenance of law and order. While still a young man, he was appointed a magistrate of the territory. He was afterwards elected as a representative of part of the Hunter River district in the Legislative Council, when that body was partly nominated and partly elected. In politics, he was a constant Liberal. He was attached to the church of his fathers, the Church of Scotland, and taking a lively interest in the current history of that church. For in religion as well as in politics, he was a firm friend of liberty and the rights of the people. And he not only held decided opinions, he was generous in devoting his wealth to the extension of what he believed to be the important truth. At his own expense, he built a church in Richmond on which he had inscribed the title Free Presbyterian Church. He was a representative elder in the church, and although he defended the position taken by the Free Church in 1843, in opposition to those who would have subjected the spiritual management of the church to state control, he was among the foremost to welcome and to forward the work of union in the colony. He was also a liberal promoter of education. He was one of the largest contributors to the Australian College. His eldest son went to the UTS, and two youngest went to Scotland, his father's homeland, to further their study. His twin sons went to London to study the bar and became barristers, and his two daughters married Cameron brothers of Richmond, one of them being the Presbyterian Reverend. George was living in Richmond once more in his older years. He had 30 grandchildren from 7 children. His last charitable effort was to order a tower for his church and a town clock for the Richmond church, which is believed to be still in use. The clock was ordered from London and arrived after George passed in 1878. He was 83. A year after his sister Mary, who married James Chisholm, 25 years her senior, in 1818, and had 7 children. James had also been one of the founding members of the Bank of Australia. She succeeded him by 40 years, but never remarried. There is much more that can be told about this family, especially George, but walking around Richmond, you can plainly see its history that the Bowmans were a part of in the beginnings. Enjoy. Windy. 1845. It was on land donated by George Bowman, and he also helped fund it. Which is filming as well. Now this is a memorial to Dr. Andrew Cameron, the brother of the Reverend, who was at this church. A lot of additions to the church from what it was in 1845. Bell tower. Bell tower donated by George Bowman. And the clock, which is still telling the time. And the house of Reverend James Cameron, built a long time ago. Look at those willow tree and plane tree. Amazing. Someone lives there, so we can't. Stay filming forever. Grand, isn't it? Yeah. The Richmond RSL sub-branch was the Masonic Lodge, but it was first school in Richmond. Oh, okay. It was the Masonic Lodge from about 1929, I believe, up until 1996 when the Richmond RSL took it over. It's quite interesting the way it's decorative. That's probably been put there by the Masonic people, I assume. The street here is quite historical. Try not to get killed while I'm doing so. Yeah, so this was a school originally, the first Richmond school, and apologies for the bumpy ride. You can even see the remnants of the old bell tower. They would have called the kiddies to come to school. And then the Masonic Lodge. And now the RSL have it. can take photos if you want. I'll get footage. It's open actually. Be careful. It's interesting. Must be the members of the RSL down the back there, or the Masonic Lodge. Who knows? It's quite decorative though around the edges of the roof. And then the School of Arts. George Bowman put a lot of money into school and education for the area. Quite involved. I don't think the Richmond Library's been around for very too long. But there's other houses that have been around for a long time. Here at the old Presbyterian cemetery, and immediately when you walk into the picket fence you see how unloved this place is, which is pretty upsetting. Yeah, look, it's probably ground erosion and movement that's caused these kind of things, but this place is definitely less unloved than some that we've been to, and more, I don't know, damp. It seems damper here, even considering drought, not really drought, but the heat that we've been having lately has been pretty hot. We're usually filming in it, so it's nice to have a cooler day. Just having a quick squiz, not too close because it looks like there's a sinkhole over there. Just hoping nobody I need to see is on that side. I'll just have a little look anyway, bugger it. As long as I don't go careering down into an unmarked grave. So I'm looking for the Bowmans and the Camerons. They don't seem to be here. Oh, so crushed. Now this cemetery was only from about 1860. Because they were buried in St Peter's Cemetery before that. This was really only the now uniting, previously Presbyterian cemetery. Such a shame. There are more down the back there, but it's so damp and sludgy. One extreme to the other around here. Either an extreme heat or pouring rain. Look at that Claude Charles Kidd. I was only watching Captain Kidd not long ago with Charles Lawton in it. I just piqued my interest. I'll just walk along here toward the Bowman grave. Douglas. I am still looking for the Cameron grave as well. Make sure I find them too. Look at that Matthew Hobart Bowman. 1878. Second son of William and Charlotte Bowman. They must have been the son of one of George's sons, perhaps. I don't want to get in the way of Mitch's filming, so Cornwall family. But that's the Bowman lot there. I'll go and have a look at that in a moment. Mitch take the Bowman footage. I'll get down here. Now, as I said, they're not as old as some of the ones we've seen before. The internment started from about 1860-ish, but they're still old, as you can see. Some of them may be a little bit more recent, 1987, so we won't go too close. A lot of them have fallen, sadly. This one's the Bowman vault. With wasp. And there's people coming across, so we'll skedaddle soon. People wondering why people are filming these graves. If they knew the story, they'd know the importance. Andrew Cameron and Mary Ann Bowman and James Cameron and Eliza. The two daughters, I believe, of George Bowman, and their resting place, and we've lost one of the middle one there. It's quite interesting. And we'll let other people come and view.
Aussie made.